Hi there. Thank you so much for joining this evening or this morning or wherever you are, this 4 a.m. in some parts. And I'm very glad that you have come to join us. And what we're going to do is kind of explore smell from a kind of different point of view from probably what you may be used to as a kind of like professional smell explorer. Um, and maybe this is a bit off-road in terms of thinking and thinking in terms of smell. So I would like you to kind of suspend judgment a little bit and just come along for the ride and see how and if at the end of this session you have a different perspective on what smell is. It's a little bit, to me, it reminds me of going to like a restaurant which, well, I can't even remember going to a restaurant, but you get a glass of wine and the sommelier might tell you, give you some really cliched ideas of what you're drinking. And in a way, it kind of gets in the way of you tasting the wine. And so this presentation is a little bit like that, to kind of recover your own kind of confidence in having your own sense of description and memory related to smells around you. Hopefully you have a smell, you've gathered a smell that you are interested in, maybe around the house. It could be toothpaste, or it could be, a pencil or whatever, something that has a kind of smell that you've been around for perhaps a long time and that you've maybe ignore, but has something about it. So if you haven't done that already, if you could grab one. And the other thing is, if you could have two sheets of paper, blank sheets of paper with a pen or a pencil nearby. And if you want to take notes, then maybe that could be a different piece of paper from those. So to get going, I'd like to start with a slideshow. So I'm just going to share my screen and get the slideshow going. Oh, can you see this screen now
Yeah, absolutely.
with the Huichol?
With the Wichol.
Okay, so I suppose this journey of mine starts here. I mean, I started smelling probably, that was one of the first things in my mother's womb. Perhaps I was smelling, or perhaps shortly afterwards. But for me, smell really started happening in a powerful way when I was in the desert in the eastern Sierra Madre in Mexico. I was about 26, and I was having some experiences with this Huichol. They call themselves Waxirica tribe. And I was in the desert with Marcelino, who's this shaman in the image. And he encouraged me to understand how the senses could be enlarged and grown beyond what you would usually expect. And for an example, I was there in the desert with Marcelino by my side, and he had me in this state where I had kind of expanded consciousness, and I could smell melons, and I looked around me, and of course I couldn't find any melons at all. And we were in the desert, and you don't have melons in the desert. And I looked up and I could see a speck on the horizon, and it looked like a person on a bicycle very, very far away. And sure enough, about 10 minutes later, this guy came by slowly on his bicycle, and sure enough, he had melons in the back of his bicycle. So I realized at that moment that our sense of smell is very, very acute. And what happens is that our brain has filters that usually turn off our sense of smell, our ability to smell, our ability to detect and sense things at a distance. And sometimes they filter through, and we call it intuition or coincidence, or, oh, isn't that funny? I was just thinking of melons, 10 minutes ago. That's how we usually kind of write off those things. But I just wanted to say that our sense of smell is incredibly powerful. And also in the brain, it's the only sense, I believe, that doesn't cross over. Our sense of touch crosses over, like my right hand sensing crosses over into my left brain, and my right eye too crosses over into my left brain. So but the nose, I think, goes straight. The right nostril goes to the right brain, left nostril goes to the left brain, as far as I understand it. So it's a kind of different and more basic smell that we have. And anyway, I'd just like to continue the journey from the Eastern Sierra Madre to the to Kassel, which is in Germany. And every 5 years there's an art event called Documenta, and it lasts for 100 days. And I was invited to build a cabin there. And the cabin was in the forest, beautiful German forest by the river. And so the visitor, and there's probably about, I don't know, 100,000 or 200,000 visitors to document over the 100 days, came across this cabin. And inside the cabin, they would find this kind of space that seemed like there was a mirror in the floor. So the space looked a lot bigger from the when you were in the inside. And what happened was that actually there was no mirror there. I just built the cabin downwards into the ground to create a kind of what I call an expectancy violation, which is that you think you're seeing something or experiencing something, but really it's something else. And at that moment, your kind of brain clicks and something new comes into your understanding of life. And down there in the bottom of the cabin, and Saskia came by, and down there I worked with about 7,000 people over about 370 performances over the 100 days. And I made these hypnotic journeys that had narratives that were based on, let's see, I'll jump to here. They were based on a kind of menu system. So they were kind of randomized. There was about 2,000 different narrative possibilities based on this menu. And the menu system, the people who came to the cabin actually chose the narrative. I would give them a kind of visual menu, and then they'd choose these little squares in the top right. And that would give the kind of narrative sequence. And the way it relates to smell is that this was my first encounter with working with smell within the context of art. And probably since then, that was 2012, a lot of artists have begun to work with smell. Not that I was the first, and I wasn't even the one who was manipulating the smells, but this project was with Raimundas Malasauskas, who's a Lithuanian artist, curator, and writer. And he suggested that we should get Sisel Tolas involved, and she's a kind of superstar of smell. And I think she may have been one of the inspirations for Saskia to start the Institute. And she's based in Berlin. She's Scandinavian, I think Swedish. And she's based in Berlin, and she is a kind of superstar smell scientist, smell chemist, smell artist. And she's done such things as create a cheese from Beckham's like running shoes, and she also made a book of I think it was like 10 men, but there was no photograph of the men. It was just a description and then a blank page with the smell of each man. So she's done pretty radical things. She also explores how people relate to the city by creating these kind of smell nodes around the city, and then kind of doing a kind of mapping of who and what and how smells work around the city. And then going back to this slide on the left, there were 4 smells that she developed, and we put them into these little notebooks, and I put them on the end of a stick so that I could keep my voice distant from people, but then just very gently deploy the smell into people's noses without them really realizing if the smell was there or if it was imaginary or real, because there were also smells in the hypnotic narratives. I've experimented a lot with different smells. This was a collaboration with Saskia and the Institute, and it was called Social Pharmacon, and it was a year after the Documenta project. And I was interested in the influence of social media on the brain. Here I'm wearing a kind of brain monitor, EEG, and looking at social media. And there's a little kind of robot that's transducing my brainwave state onto a piece of paper, so a kind of visual recording. And I was very interested in, there's Saskia. Sorry, there we go, there's Saskia. And I asked Saskia to help develop this kind of the smell of what I thought could be social pharmacon, which is this kind of pharmacon means medicine, poison. And so, you know, it's this kind of ongoing discussion about what social media is. Is it good or is it bad? Is it bringing us friends or is it just creating distance? And so you may be able to see, but I developed this little logo with a thumbs up and a thumbs down. So kind of taking the Facebook thing and kind of creating a kind of ambivalence there. And I can't take the credit, but Saskia developed this smell that seemed to mesh with this idea of the social pharmacon. And so I suppose one thing about smell more generally is I like this book called Seeing is Forgetting the Name of the Thing One Sees, which was written by Robert Owen, who was I'm not sure if he's still around, but he was an influential artist for the space and light movement in California. And again, seeing is forgetting the name of the thing one sees. It sounds like a very simple title, but I think smell is very similar to that. Smelling is forgetting the description of the thing one is smelling. You know, it's often, if you're given a description, it kind of ruins the smell because it kind of collapses your sense of what that smell is supposed to be. It takes the personal aspect away from you. More adventures in smell. I kind of also meshed with the perfumer's studio that is in Thailand, and also they have a place in West Hollywood. And what I was interested in was that they have these smells that are pheromone based, and so they don't really smell of much, but they kind of hook into the unconscious side of how we smell and how we navigate around the world around us. You know, obviously in terms of social interactions and things like that. You know, attraction, all those kind of things are interesting because they're kind of often subliminal. I also wanted to, hopefully this is going to work. It's an interview with Sandy from the Royal Salute. I'll just see if I can play it. My mum's kind of spent a lot of time growing up in Spain.
Right, so there'll be smells in that.
Yeah, I went back to this garage with the, you know, where they used to kind of clean they used to hold the fish when they cleaned the pond, and had the cars and they clean the, you know, swap the tires out. And
Takes you right back. Yeah. It's amazing. It is. It's just like there's a hook there all the time.
Yeah.
There's a hook there all the time. You know, and I think I sometimes think, and I'm maybe just talking rubbish, but I sometimes think that there is a bit of that when people drink whiskey. When they find a whiskey they really like, it takes them to a place.
Yeah, it has much more narrative than.
When you nose and taste it, there's a little bit of it. It takes you back to a place where everything was really. That was a good time. It was a lovely. That was a great. You know that. And they don't. I think sometimes people don't even realise it. It's almost like and it's almost like when they drink it, it's like a cosy experience. It's almost like it's taking you back to a nice place, a warm, fluffy place where you really, you know, it was great to be. You know, it's amazing how, and I think that has a lot to do with how people like specific whiskies. But hugely different. That there, it's sweet, it's blackcurrant, wee touch of that sort of homemade jam in there. That is raisins, fruitcake. That is, it's licorice. It's got a wee bit of spice. It's a country mile away from the first sample.
He's tasting. It's definitely rubber.
Yeah, and rubber's good. See, from a blender's point of view, if you were working in my sample room, you'd be all right saying that. It's not a friend that works for consumers.
Yeah.
But you're spot on. You're absolutely spot on how you're describing it. Yep. tires.
Yeah,
Some of my
yeah,
guys
yeah,
describe
yeah,
it. They
completely.
fall into two people. It's a bit like cherry matured whiskey can almost fall into the Islay category. You either love it or hate it. Some people just hate that smoky.
No, I really like that.
Yeah.
There's in perfume they call it cade.
Right.
Do you know?
No,
Have you heard of cade?
no.
It's a burnt molecule.
Right.
Kind of like a.
Anyway, hang on, I'll just turn the microphone around. So what's interesting about that is obviously whiskey has, a master blender doesn't necessarily have much to do with the perfumer, but it's really interesting to see how a master blender, basically the tradition is that you find your own smells. Might be your grandmother's geranium smell, or it might be the kind of leather satchel that you used when you went to school when you were 8 years old. And they're really discouraged from kind of the cliche descriptions of what tasters would usually describe whiskey with. So, in this particular case, he was talking about burnt rubber and how, that's a fair description of a kind of a note in the whiskey. And so that I think is important as a lesson, is that he suggests in order to be a master blender is that you have to develop your own special smells, and you can't just borrow the grandmother's geranium from your mentor teacher. You have to grab your own smells from your own histories. So this is a project I did. It's called Memory Observatory, and it was in 2016 at South by Southwest, and it was about memories and about the correspondence of smell and image and color and all these factors. And basically, just quickly, a person would go into the small trapezoid shape, and they would download their memory related to an image that they had on their phone. Like, for instance, this was the last image I took with my father, and it was in San Francisco. Or this is an image of my son before he graduated, kind of like special images that meant something to people. And then after about 3 or 4 minutes of the interview, they'd go through into this larger trapezoid shape, and they'd experience that memory back to them, augmented with sound and color and smell. And you may ask how the hell one could do that. Well, one thing is that we had, I'll just jump to this slide. There was a kind of behind the curtain, there was a kind of team of people, including myself, who were kind of orchestrating this correspondence. And that correspondence, we used this smell wheel, which was developed by Plutchnik, who was a psychologist from the 50s and 60s. But his part of the wheel related color to 8 types of emotions. So, for instance, yellow, he associated with joy or serenity. This mauve color to boredom, disgust, loathing. The intensity of the emotions gets stronger towards the center. Green would be fear and terror in the middle. So each of these colors was related to an emotion. So what I thought would be interesting was to expand that color relationship to smell. Obviously, there's the smell alphabet that has colors, so it's part of the work is done. And I asked Stephen Braithwaite of Perfumer Studio to help me make these corresponding smells. Like, for instance, red is cinnamon, cardamom. Oranges is cedar wood, tobacco, benzoin. Green is lily of the valley, damp earth, fresh water, etc., etc. So anyway, so when the person eventually got into that larger chamber, they would see the photograph in a kind of kaleidoscopic mirrored vault, and the floor would change color and the smell would correspond to their emotion, whether it was sadness or happiness. So it would cycle through these different emotion spaces. So that was a kind of pretty interesting use of smell that goes beyond, let's say, the standard perfumery world. And then another project that I did with Saskia's amazing help and the Institute's help was the droplet. Was it Charlotte who helped on that one? Yeah, she did an incredible job. And basically, this is the Musée de la Monnaie, which is just by the Seine Museum, sorry, the Seine River. And this incredible place right here has been running for 1200 years continuously. And it's the place where they make the coins for, they make the coins for France. And it's been running since the year 800. And this project was about water and about water scarcity and the use of water resources in the world. And suddenly with all the fires going on in California and all the way up to Canada, you know, we think about how precious water is, and without it, you know, what happens. And anyway, the smells, we developed all these smells that went through different historical times and there was sound and other things involved. Just wanted to jump to one of the neuroscientists that Saskia mentioned at the beginning, Richard Cytoek. I've had the good fortune of collaborating with him on lots of different projects. He's written these incredible books, such as Wednesday is Indigo Blue, and this book on synesthesia that was with MIT Press that I think just came out last year. And also the blue book on the left, Synesthesia, is actually was written in like about the 1980s, before anybody had mostly, well, synesthesia was a kind of forgotten condition. And for those of you who might not know what synesthesia is, it means it's the syn, which is together, and esthos is the sensing, so sensing together, and it relates to a condition that certain people have where they have an overlap in their brain where they sense color as sound or smell as words or shapes or forms. Sorry, jumping around. And I've collaborated with him with various projects to do with smell and taste and touch and memory. That was in England. This one was in Building Bridges, which is in Santa Monica, and I took the project to the Havana Biennial, where people had a very incredible encounter of smell and touch and taste and form. Sorry, there's the droplet again, the droplet. And I forgot to mention in the droplet, I also did a live event for about 200 people, where we kind of opening them up to a kind of meditative sense of water and these emotions and senses. Here is another project. I'm realizing how many projects we did together with the Institute of Art and Olfaction. And this was last year, and it was in last year in the good old days when you could actually get together with people in a real space together. I don't know if you remember that. And it was called Culture Summit, and it happens in Abu Dhabi, and it was sponsored by the Guggenheim and the Royal Academy of Arts in London. And I was invited to be a keynote artist and to open up this event. And Saskia and the Institute helped me develop this card that I'm holding here in my right hand, which has an orange side and a turquoise side. And the orange side had a certain texture, and the turquoise side had another texture. And we impregnated it with a certain smell, the smell of wet concrete. And the idea of the performance, which involved hypnosis, was to give the audience a sensation, an idea of how a building could become liquid in a way, how you could undo a building, because the theme of the symposium which lasted for 3 or 4 days, was about the crisis of museums and how maybe museums are less important now, or maybe they should become more important in a kind of social media way or disembodied way. So that was pretty interesting. And then I think the last part of the slideshow is I've been working recently with a clinic in Germany that works with stroke patients. And when the mind is damaged by a stroke, patients lose the ability in some cases to walk, in some cases to speak, and in some cases, you know, just motor skills. and all sorts of aspects of mobility. They also have this thing called neglect, which is that 80% of stroke patients lose the sensation that half of their body exists and half of the outside world exists, which sounds very strange, but they just they ignore one side of the body and one side of the world around them. They'll just only eat half a plate, let's say. And so I've been working with certain therapies that will bring healing through this kind of synesthetic process, including smell. You can see on the sketch on the right, I've kind of tied in that Plutchik wheel, the enhanced Plutchik wheel. And I've been developing therapies to do with touch and sensing and texture and memory and smell. And so this is, for instance, this is an object that I've created as a therapy for these stroke patients. And in the middle of the object, there's these two different types of smell. So, so on the outside, the stroke patient will be looking and feeling and remembering about these textures, and on the inside, the smells will also enhance certain parts of their mind. And the last slide I have here is I'm also working with artificial intelligence to optimize how brains can be expanded. In a way, it goes back to the Huichol experience, which is very analog and in the mountains, but I think we can do similar things with AI and augmented reality and new technologies, but using smell as the main tool to reach into people's minds and grow their ability to sense and to engage with the world around them creatively. So that was basically a kind of wander around some of my work. I guess we could have some questions now, or we could go through and do the exercise and then have questions at the end. What do you think, Saskia?
Well, let's see. Does anybody have any questions now? I think the people will determine. I'll give everyone just a minute or two while they sort of come up with it. So when did you first start thinking about incorporating your smell into your artwork, Marcos? Was it with the Documenta project?
Yeah, I think the Documenta thing really opened it up, and,
yeah.
And I saw the potential. There was one smell that was the kind of smell of ozone that gave me goosebumps, and I realized that it had such a strong potential. And again, I suppose a lot of art is very physical and very object oriented, and there's something beautiful about smell that reaches so much deeper and yet is invisible.
Yeah, and you can't really turn it off, can you? Which I think is really interesting. Like the sort of agency from the participant is questioned. Aubrey says, would love to hear you speak more about what the phrase "smelling is forgetting the name of the thing one smells" from the Robert Irwin book title means for you and your work. And then follow up after. Go ahead.
Well, that goes back to the kind of sommelier in a restaurant telling you what the wine's supposed to taste like, and then then it ruins it, because then your own associations have been overcome and taken over. And I think the same thing probably happens in the olfactory, the perfumer's universe, where I'm not that familiar with it, but if you go to the airport, I remember I used to go to the airport. And you read those little like brief descriptions of the perfume, and it just completely flattens it. And
that sort of desire to create a taxonomy and understand, and it's sort of it makes sense to me, actually. That, and Aubrey said earlier that they use that phrase all the time when they think about smell, so it's kind of cool.
They do. Who uses that?
Aubrey. The person who just asked the question as well.
Oh, that's strange, because I just kind of invented it intuitively based on Robert Owen's book.
No, I mean they thought of the Robert Irwin quote when they think about smell, which is cool.
Oh, they do. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Okay, well, that's good. I arrived late to the party, but it's good that it comes from different directions and it makes
It's a
sense.
party of two. Mercedes wants to know how each color was related to emotions and notes. I think relating to maybe the thing behind you actually on
The Plutchnik wheel.
Yeah.
Again, this is like I work with psychologists, and neuroscientists, so I'm not the world's biggest expert, but I'm kind of basing it on on Plutchnik's work, and he had a career of 30 years or so. I like, for instance, red is related to anger, anger, rage, and annoyance. But it's also, red can be passion too. So I don't think it's like a complete. I actually think that the model can be completed better, because I think that there should be two circles, one above the other, and the positive attributes should be above and the negative should be below, let's say. And because you could have like positive yellow attributes and negative yellow attributes. In green, for instance, green, which is apprehension, fear, terror. Green can also have this sensation of lush, nurturing of nature. So I think the model actually has to be augmented, and I haven't got around to it, but I will.
All in time. Adva wants to know, as an artist, was it hard to get collaboration from perfumers, or did you have to learn perfumery?
Well, I just had the good fortune of I've only collaborated with the Perfumer Studio and the Institute for Art and Olfaction, and luckily
Cecil.
And Cecil too. Cecil, I say in a way it wasn't really a collaboration, because she came to the project with her own smells. So it was still officially a collaboration, but it was not. I didn't consider myself to be having an input on that. I was more a receiver, which was great too, because I learned a lot. But I suppose in terms of collaboration, the Perfumer Studio and the Institute for Art and Olfaction, and those have just been great experiences.
You can't say the opposite, because I'm here.
I find, I suppose I have talked to some perfumers, and sometimes they're a bit rigid, and sometimes a bit wooden, and sometimes they just want to do things for the perfume industry. And it's just, I suppose sometimes it's worth stepping back and thinking about what this is all about, and if there are other dimensions that people haven't thought about. And maybe if you are a perfumer, having considered those things, you might be able to drag them back into the perfume world and say, listen, this has been neglected. Let's give this a shot. I suppose it's like art, visual art, like a painting. If it might be too slick, or it might be too pretentious. And sometimes you want to get some grit back in there. That's why I've asked you to grab something from around your home that isn't necessarily a perfume at all. In fact, that's probably the last thing I'd like, is just something. And going a bit back to what Sandy was talking about, it could be like rubber tires could inspire you for a perfume, rather than, Chanel No. 5 or something, something much more personal.
Maybe just one or two more questions, and then we can get back to your talk. Lilu wants to know, was the smelling experience work as trigger to stimulate memories, to start the narrative thread, or to enter the memoryscape for the individual/collective? Do you want me to repeat that question?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about it. I think memories, memory to trigger memories, but I especially like the idea of smell being able to trigger anticipated memories you haven't had, perhaps, or things that you haven't thought about, or things you haven't thought about in certain ways. And I think going back to Cecile, she developed these like 800 different smells. I can't remember what the exact number is, but 800 smells that she claimed people were not familiar with. And the idea is that you buy one of the smell packets, And when you're about to have a special memory, like for instance, if you're proposing to somebody, or if you've, want to have a singular memory of something that will stay forever, basically at that moment you crack open this unknown smell. And so the memory will kind of link into that moment. And then so anytime in the future that you want to have a clear grasp of that memory, you just listen, you smell that smell again. And it will take you right back there. So I think in that way, memory is very interesting. And, Proust talked about À la recherche du temps perdu in his book, how the taste of the Madeleine would transport him back. And in the same way, smell can also transport back. But I think there's more interesting things than nostalgia. There's more urgent things than nostalgia.
Yeah. Okay. So one more question, and I'm going to combine questions. Do you have any experience working with autistic children? Many of them have synesthesia and see colors and numbers. Asked Jasmine, and then Yuwande has a flip side of that, which is scent with Alzheimer's. Can scent work with Alzheimer's patients? Do you have any experience with those two, or any?
There was somebody who came to one of the sessions in Documenta, and I actually wrote a book called Memoirs of a Hypnotist, 100 Days, and it's in the book. But he had Parkinson's, and the Parkinson's rigor, where you shake and your muscles start to atrophy, completely went away for him. For a while, they kind of crept back, but every time I did a hypnosis with him, he had a good response to that. And I know it's not the same as Alzheimer's, but I do believe that, with Alzheimer's, for instance, I believe that if you exercise the brain, it helps to resist the plaque build up. So I think it would work in a similar way. And then in terms of autistic children, unfortunately I haven't had the opportunity. But this prototype, actually I got it over here. Here it is. Whoops. This prototype would be really interesting to work with autistic children. And autism is, one of the traits of autism. And again, I'm not an expert, but it's this kind of disconnection from what's around us. And so this would encourage the kids to connect more. So if anybody knows any autistic kids, that
you can go to my sister, Mary. Yeah. There's quite a bit of work been done with Alzheimer's and scent, and so I'll look for some links at some point during this talk and share it in the chat. But it's definitely been discussed quite a bit. So there's a lot of research to draw from if you guys are curious.
Yeah, I'd love to know too.
Yeah. So Marcos, are you ready to move on to the rest of the?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
This second part is more to do with the direct engagement of the unconscious, of your unconscious, with the sense of smell. And hopefully it's not so much just the exercise we're going to do, which will be interesting. I love that cat, by the way. So it's like learning to ride a bike, as far as I understand it. So hopefully this short exercise will give you the idea of how you can connect to your own unconscious when you're perhaps developing scents or perfume, and how you can kind of make those decisions and trust your internal conviction about things, as opposed to second guessing and having to ask your neighbor, like, what do you think this smells like? Well, you don't need to necessarily to ask anybody if you have a good connection with your unconscious. So what this is basically a guided meditation. It's like a hypnosis. The two things are quite similar. And I have a menu here that I've developed for this session. And so hopefully you have a smell close by to you. Yeah. And then it's just accessible within arm's reach. And then also you have a couple of pieces of paper, maybe they're, letter size or A4 or half that size, doesn't matter, but something that's kind of comfortable. and it's within arm's reach, hopefully. Or if you're sitting on a sofa, you know, hopefully you have a something to put it on, to write or draw. And so what we're going to do during this is very simple. All you need to do is relax. That's the main thing, is to relax and listen to the sound of my voice. And as the session progresses, you may or may not be aware of my voice. You may just drift off and daydream about other things, and that's fine too. At some level of your consciousness, you'll be listening to what I'm saying. And at some point during the session, I'm gonna ask you just to smell the smell. And you can, even though you're in a very relaxed state, maybe with your eyes closed, or you can just open your eyes just gently, you can just reach out for the smell, smell it, just almost as if you're just dozing. And then at another moment, I'll ask you to pick up the pen or pencil, again, staying in a very relaxed state, and draw just automatically on the paper. The quality of the drawing is the least of our worries. It's just basically getting your hand to respond to what's in your mind. So whenever you're ready, just gonna move the microphone off the computer. There we go. So whenever you're ready, if you're wearing glasses, it might be an idea just to take them off so you can rest your nose. Your nose does a lot of work, and maybe it's time to rest. And I'd like you to get as comfortable as possible. You could just be sitting in a chair, or you could be lying down, whatever you prefer. You could be on a couch, on a sofa. And whenever you're ready now, just to close your eyes. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. And as you listen to the sound of my voice, I'd like you just to relax more and more, deeper and deeper now. And I'd like you to feel a sense of relaxation just coming down through the top of your head and down around your eyes, relaxing your eyes, your eyelids, and all the way through to the back of your mind now, just completely relaxed. And I like that feeling of relaxation now just to come down over your cheeks and down around your nose. Just take a deep breath through your nose. And I like that feeling of relaxation now just to come down over your cheekbones and around the jaw muscles. Relaxing your jaw muscles now. And I like that feeling of relaxation now just to come down into your mouth, your tongue feeling very heavy and very relaxed. And your throat. And your voice box feeling very comfortable and very relaxed. And I like that feeling of heavy relaxation now just to go around to your ears and inside your ears and all the way into your inner ear. Your helicotrema, all the way down and down into the back of your mind. And I'd like that feeling of relaxation now just to come down through your neck and down over your shoulders. And any tension you may have in your shoulders, just allow it to just wash away. And any other thoughts or feelings from outside, you can just allow them just to drift off now as you listen to the sound of my voice. And I like that feeling of heavy relaxation now just to come down over your chest and down into your lungs and down into your heart that's beating there and all the way down into your inner organs and all the way down to your stomach. And that feeling of heavy relaxation now is just going down through your back, one vertebra at a time, all the way down deep in the inside. And that feeling of heavy relaxation now is just going down over your left shoulder and your right shoulder and down through your biceps and triceps and down through your elbows and your forearms and all the way down to your hands as they're resting there very comfortably and very relaxed. Each and every one of your fingers comfortably and relaxed. And I like that feeling of heavy relaxation now just to go all the way down through your hips and down through your thighs and the backs of your thighs, your knees, the backs of your knees. And all the way down to your shins and your ankles as they're resting there very comfortable and very relaxed. And all the way down to your feet and each and every one of your toes now, very heavy and very relaxed. And as you're listening to the sound of my voice, taking another deep breath through your nose and just allow yourself to relax deeper and deeper now. And in a few moments, I'd like you to imagine yourself at the top of a set of stairs, and maybe these stairs are from a long time ago, or maybe they're just made up in your mind's eye. And in a few moments, I'm just going to count down from 10 to 1, and when I reach 1, I would like you just to be in a very relaxed state of mind, more relaxed than you've ever been before now. And in a few moments, I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and with every number, I'd like you just to go down one step at a time, deep down to a safe place on the inside. 10, taking the first step down now in your own time now. 9, dreaming and drifting. 8, just allowing yourself to feel so incredibly heavy and so relaxed now. 7, dreaming and drifting now, allowing time to go slower and slower at your own speed now. 6, 5, going further and further down now, almost all the way down now. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 now, all the way down now, deep down on the inside. And in this very relaxed state of mind, I'd like you just to go back to your nose, your nasal cavities, and focus all your attention on your nasal cavity. And as you breathe in and out, you can feel the flow of air coming into your nose, and then breathing out through your nose now. And I'd like you to consider yourself with each breath, how your nose is there in front of your body, perhaps leading the way as you move through life. And I'd like you to imagine yourself now perhaps inside your nasal cavity, perhaps as a small person inside your nasal cavity, and feeling and sensing how your nasal cavity is this huge cavernous space. And with every breath now, you can feel yourself going deeper and deeper into your nasal cavity. Feeling and sensing how the chemicals and the electrical fields work together inside your nasal cavity to create the sense of smell that travels up to your mind. And perhaps your right nasal cavity smells in a certain different way from your left nasal cavity, and you can feel and sense perhaps that one nasal cavity behaves slightly different from the other. Perhaps one is related more to thoughts and memories, and the other is just to sensing and intuition. And in a few moments, I'm going to count down from 3 to 1, and when I reach 1, I would like you just to empty out all those smell associations that you have stored up in your nose. Any smell associations you may have stored up in your nose that have been clogging the way that you feel and sense about smell. 3, getting ready now just to let go of those smell associations. Those ideas perhaps that you've been taught, but perhaps you don't agree with completely now. 2, and 1, just allow yourself to flush out all those associations so that your nose can smell for the first time, as if for the first time. And as you're dreaming and drifting now in a very, very relaxed state, you can allow your eyes to remain closed, or you could just open your eyes, but stay in a very, very relaxed state. And I'd like you just slowly to pick up that object that has smell in it. Maybe it's already in your hands, and just bring it up to your nose. Just take that smell, breathe it in now. And whenever you're ready now, I'd like you just to put that smell down, and we're just going to go into the past. And I'm just slowly going to count down from 20 to 1, and when we reach 1, we'll be back in the past, perhaps, with your first encounter of that smell now. 20, dreaming and drifting now. 19, 18, going further and further back now. 17, feeling and sensing yourself, going further back now. 17, 16, allowing your body to become younger and younger now. 15, perhaps you're wearing the clothes from a long time ago now. 14, feeling and sensing yourself drifting and dreaming backwards now. 13, 12, going further and further back in time now, dreaming and drifting backwards now. 12, 11, 10, going further and further back now, feeling yourself traveling further back now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, allowing that smell to flood through all your systems now. 5, 4, that smell so incredibly intense, bringing back that memory, that earliest memory now. 3, 2, and 1 now, being there in that memory. Being there in that memory, feeling and sensing everything about that memory, the color, the texture, the shape, the forms, taste, if there is any taste, where you are, what you're wearing, perhaps people around you that you haven't thought about for such a long time. Dreaming and drifting now, dreaming and drifting in that smell now, and realizing certain things about that smell perhaps that you hadn't realized before, as if that smell opens up so many pathways being opened up again, and how that moment relates to other moments, to other moments, to other moments. And in a few moments, I'm going to count slowly down from 3 to 1. And when I reach 1, I would like you just to draw very easily and fluidly your impressions of that smell on a sheet of paper in front of you. 3, 2, and 1 now. Just allowing yourself to draw the impressions, perhaps just a sketch, perhaps shapes, forms, feelings. Just allow your hand, without thinking too much, just allow your hand just to trace its own contours. Just as if this was just like a way of being like a key to that smell. A kind of body memory inside your hand that connects to your arm, that connects to your mind, that connects to your nose, that connects to the memories. Dreaming and drifting now, dreaming and drifting. Dreaming and drifting, dreaming and drifting. And as you're there now, just allow, whenever you're ready, whenever you like, just allow your hand just to let go of the writing instrument. And just close your eyes again and just allow yourself to relax as we just do one more exercise before waking up. Dreaming and drifting now, 10, going further and further down now, 9, 8, 7. That deep breath through your nose now, 6, going further and further down now, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 now, all the way down in a very relaxed state. And this time we're just going to go into the future now. We're just going to allow ourselves to go into the future, and this future will be a future related to that smell and how that smell relates to future moments, perhaps to a future moment or a future encounter, or maybe a future creation now. And you may be listening to the sound of my voice thinking that you're here now, or you may be here now as time moves on and this moment goes from moment to moment. And perhaps you can imagine yourself in a few moments' time, and that's kind of like being in the future, and you can also be there now at that moment, which is the present. And I'd like you to feel yourself now drifting further forwards into the future, perhaps into tomorrow or the next day or next week, and how easy it is to slide through time. And I'd like you to feel yourself now sliding and dreaming and drifting forwards through time, perhaps a month, perhaps a year, letting go of all the things about the present moment that trap us. And allow yourself just to move forwards. A year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. Maybe 100 years or maybe 1,000 years. And in a few moments, I'm going to count down from 3 to 1. And when I reach 1, I would like that smell, the same smell, to form a new ideation in your mind now. 3, 2, and 1 now. Just allow that smell to form a new shape or form or sense or anticipation. The color, the texture, the form, the shape, the taste, the weight, the movement. And I'm going to count down from 3 to 1, and when I reach 1, I would like you just to draw what's in your mind's eye, just fluidly and comfortably on the paper in front of you. 3, 2, and 1 now. Just allow yourself now to render what's in your mind's eye. 3, 2, 1. And just feeling and dreaming and drifting and sensing what's in your mind's eye. Just easily transferred onto that piece of paper. And from the paper, up your arm and into your mind, and back to your nose in this cycle, and the muscle memory, and the embodied sense of smell deep on the inside. And in a few moments, I'd like you just to let go of the pencil. I'm going to count down from 3 to 1, and when I reach 1, you can just let go of the pencil. 3, 2, and 1. And I'm slowly going to count up from 1 to 10, and in whatever state you are, whether you're in a deep state of relaxation or whether you're feeling awake or whether you're feeling here and there, connecting with your unconscious, I'm going to count up from 1 to 10. And when I reach 10, you'll be wide awake and back in the space we started from. 1, slowly coming back in your own time now. 2, dreaming and drifting backwards now. 3, feeling time coming back to its normal state now. 4, 5, Your body coming back to normal, very relaxed. 5, full of energy, refreshed, as if coming back from a long, long sleep now. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Wide awake, wide awake.
If you're okay with it, there's a question from James. Hi, James, who gives wonderful talks with us on occasion. We need to reorganize. So he says, can you talk about scent and automatic writing? It was something that was done in the 20s, but I am not aware of contemporary practices.
Yeah, the Impressionists were, I suppose, the first people to initiate automatic writing, although, you know, who knows, maybe it happened in Lascaux in the caves, which my son was studying this morning, and I was overhearing it. And I think there was a lot of automatic writing going on there and automatic drawing. I'm not sure. I know that André Breton did a lot of automatic writing, but I'm not sure about using scent to trigger automatic writing. If anybody knows anything about that, I'd love to know.
In a way, sort of feels adjacent to what we were doing just now. You know, I mean, we were mark making, right? And James, if you want to chime in and unmute, please feel free, because I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, I know like way too much, so I don't want to talk for 2 hours. Yeah, so basically, yeah, of course. So Breton like sort of co-opted, stole all these practices from spiritualists, and you know that's how they entered artistic practice. But there were some odd experiments where people hypnotized people and then induced synesthesia, and there was this one writer of which the only other person I know who's ever read him is probably Mandy Aftel. He was this freaky, like mad German scientist named Maurer in the 1920s. He hypnotized people and asked them to describe colors with fragrances. But he had this interesting thing where certain types of materials which were more likely to induce olfactory fatigue, like ionones. He thought that that would make people go into trances, and also things that people became kind of hypoosmic to, like musks. And he would have people smell certain things, which he felt induced visionary trances, but also automatic writing. It was just very bizarre. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that, for instance, what we just did was what could be called a hypnotic session, but I believe in these things called inductive spaces. Like, for instance, that cabin that I designed where there was a mirror, but there wasn't a mirror. These spaces that you go into and that you kind of fall into like a trance-like state because it doesn't quite add up. And I think the same thing with smell is you could create an inductive space, let's say a passageway with different smells. You know, every 5 or 6 feet you have a different smell, and by the time you end up walking from one end of the passageway to the other, you might be suddenly in a different frame of mind and possibly in a trance-like state. So I suppose some of these things are going round and round, but each time hopefully some new experiences come from them, and very kind of personal connections inside, which to me is, I mean, as an artist, I always kind of had this conflicting idea of what originality was, until I kind of realized that originality is about the origin. It's about, you know, finding something really substantial within oneself or within the origin of some things. It's not about novelty or you know, doing the latest, coolest thing. It's more just going deep inside.
That's an interesting.
I suppose, yeah. No, go.
No, I was just going to say it's an interesting way of thinking about originality. I hadn't ever thought about it like that.
It takes the pressure off, basically, to think of originality as the origin of something.
Also the competition, you know, the sort of
it's
everyone
irrelevant.
needing to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And my feeling is that if you find that somebody else is doing exactly what you're doing, it's a confirmation that you're doing something worthwhile. rather than thinking, oh my God, they've already done it or they're doing it, run away.
Which is handy because everything's been done.
You
Any
just
other?
have to do it deeper.
Yeah. Bring your own perspective. Are there any other questions for Marcos, or any other comments or thoughts or experiences that you want to share? I popped in the chat some links relating to Alzheimer's. So
Yeah, I'd love
it's not,
to.
yeah, it's not deep research, but it's just stuff I was referring to when I was going through my own process of losing my my stepfather.
Talking about passing away, it's been a rough time for a lot of people, and today's is a very special day for me. I just wanted to mention that I'm launching this project called the Rose River Project, which is a memorial for all the people that have died from COVID. So it's basically asking the community to make roses that will be gathered into one huge installation of about 250,000 roses. And today's the launch day, so just wanted to mention that. So it's a very powerful, strong day emotionally for me, and it's been a big pleasure to share this kind of personal journey with you today.